Automotive Today is sponsored by Toro. And did you know that Toro has a full line of work vehicles? Whether you're hauling materials, towing equipment, or shuttling VIPs, Toro has a vehicle for you. Their Workman series is your go-to for power and payload capacity, and the Vista series is perfect for guest transportation. They also have a super comfortable ride. Plus, Toro has tons of options to customize your work vehicles, including all electric models. So check that all out at toro.com. Hey,
What's up?
how much I'm dirty. I just ran from the truck down to the
Yeah.
studio. Yeah, but we made it happen. It was fucking cold today on the golf course. Holy smokes. Getting to be that time of year.
Yeah, I'll bet.
So dark
Get
and
some.
cold. Especially you get on that first green or that first hole and you're just like, ah,
Yeah.
get her going
Oh,
today.
yeah. It was 38 here Sunday morning, and my son went to work, and first day going to work without or with his license, driving himself and everything. So I asked him, like, need me to wake you up in the morning? No, no, I got it. I got it. So I set my alarm just in case for 6:10, just to make sure he's up and moving. So needless to say, he forgot to set his alarm. So I had to go wake him up and get him moving. And it was, like I said, 38 degrees. So I don't think he had time to grab hat and gloves and all the kind of stuff. He came home, his hands, I don't think he could move his hands at all. They were just frozen
Oh,
solid from raking bunkers all morning when it was 38 to 45 degrees probably by the time he came home. So
just miserable.
'tis the season, buddy.
Yeah. Those are some of the best showers when you're just so cold and you can get in the hot shower and thaw out.
Yeah, no question. No question. Use a lot of water on those.
Oh yeah.
So
So this
what's
would be
up?
I mean, not a whole lot. We got Thank a Superintendent Day today.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of content going out for that. Casey's episode was really, really good. So hopefully that one was well received. I thought he did a great job.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
and then obviously your video on the Superintendent Network. Wow. That had me going. I liked it.
It was good. Yeah, no, it was fun to put together. I originally had this long script and, had some stuff that I was going to do, and just like, man, no, let's just showcase the work. Let's just
Yeah.
showcase and let it speak for itself. I like kind of doing that anymore. So, put some good music to it, time it up, send it out.
Yeah. No, I thought it was fantastic.
Awesome. Thanks,
And we're
man.
talking to a couple of really great people today. We're doing a double interview, which will go out over a couple of weeks. Why don't you give us a little intro on, is it Michael?
Yeah. First up, yeah, Michael Breuer used to be out at Bandon Dunes. He was an assistant out at Pacific Dunes. Um, got to know him through the whole Grady Strong. His son was born with some heart issues, and just really got to be Grady became an inspiration really for the industry. Michael was very open sharing the story about Grady. So that's how I got to know him. I went out, did a story with him a couple years ago, and Michael and I have stayed in touch. He recently got a new job as the construction superintendent at the new project just outside of Denver at Rodeo Dunes. Was lucky enough to go visit him out there when I was in Colorado for a couple days, and it's a very cool, unique, special project, and excited for him and the opportunity he's got there. Then later on, we're going to have Dan Grogan. Dan is at Sagamore Club in Indianapolis, just north of Indianapolis. Gotten to know Dan over the years. We'll talk about it during the pod, but he did something pretty cool. He just reached out to Twitter and said, "Hey, I want to start a group of people to support each other, just talk." And so he created this. I don't even know what message thing it is anymore. I think it maybe Group Me or something, but just a bunch of random superintendents and industry people from around the country, and we just have this little group that we just stay in touch and um, share what's going on in our lives. There to pick each other up and talk shop, talk family, talk whatever. And so that's how I've gotten to know Dan. Just a really, really good dude, and has picked up the phone and called me, when he knows I've been on the road all the time and get a little quiet in the message group. Yeah, just they're kind of looking out for people, and yeah, so he'll be a good one.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Good couple intros we can use leading into those guys.
Yeah, I need to be
So
better prepared for those.
those would be the two big things we talk to each of those guys about, kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, they both did well with the questionnaire. I think Mike put into more of his stories and stuff, so we can definitely
Yeah.
get into some of those. he,
Yeah, he's got some
he
good
likes to have
ones.
fun, eh?
Oh, great dude. He's popping on here. Hey,
What's going on, Michael?
Michael. Oh, let's see if that works. Now can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I took the
Hey.
headphones out. I don't know why they're not working.
No
Sorry.
worries. Did you forget to charge them last night, Michael?
No, they're charged.
Okay, okay. I was wondering if we were going to see you like out in a skid steer or bobcat or something out there this morning, but yeah, stayed home where you can actually get some good Wi-Fi signal, huh?
Right. Yeah. The cell phone service out there is a little bit spotty right now.
Yes, I get it. There's literally nothing but a gas station with expired products in
Right. You got to be
it.
careful there. You never know when you're going to develop a good case of tetanus.
I love
A
it.
good
I
case
love
of
it.
it.
It's Michael, Adam, appreciate you
Nice to meet
coming
you,
on,
Adam.
man.
Yeah, thanks a lot for coming on, man. It's a big one for us. We're excited to have you here today. And today's actually Thank a Superintendent Day. We're recording on September 10th, so hopefully you had some people reaching out to you today and saying thank you.
Well, yes, very much so. So far, though, I'm just managing sand and a lot of weeds, so no grass yet.
I was gonna say you don't have any golfers to thank you out there anymore.
We don't.
So,
No, not yet. Not yet. No, not yet.
although it sounds like you have had a few people come around and want to hit some shots from certain places and whatnot, right?
Right. I think they've had some of the founders out to hit shots, but right now it's just sand right now. It's kind of a I don't want to say blank canvas because they are doing some shaping out there, but it's very rough shaped right now.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Michael. I know obviously I'm aware of your journey, but fill in the audience.
So I was looking for a job out of high school and actually originally applied at Bandon Dunes as a greenkeeper, and I was not selected to join their crew. So kind of a funny story there. And my father-in-law, he is still involved in golf course construction, and that's kind of how I got my footprint. That's kind of how I got my foot in the doors with my father-in-law. We He was doing Bandon trails at the, or excuse me, not Bandon trails, Bandon crossings at the time. And so I joined and was just a heavy equipment operator for years and years. And then um, went to college, didn't know what I wanted to do. Originally, as a fermentation major at Oregon State, realized that was a 4-year chemistry degree, and that was that was not up my alley for sure. So then I remembered seeing all the superintendents at Bandon Dunes. I worked at Old Mac at that point as far as being on the construction team. I also helped out with trails and preserve a little bit, but I saw that industry and it looked interesting, and so I ended up majoring, and I was like, I'll give it a term at Oregon State and see what happens, and then ended up a couple years later ended up graduating from Oregon State and did an internship at Black Butte Ranch, and then I did an internship at Old Mac at Bandon Dunes and kind of bounced around in a couple places before I eventually wound back up at Bandon Dunes, and then here I am sitting in the middle of the country at Rodeo Dunes. So that's kind of a short story long, but we you never know where life's going to take you. If you would have told me a year ago I'd be living in Colorado, I probably would have laughed at you. If you would have told me 15 years ago I was in this industry, I probably would have laughed at you then. So
We hear that a lot, right? People kind of find their way into the industry, whether it's a love of something else or a love of golf, and it's nice to see you kind of found your way. What was Oregon State like for turfgrass? I don't think we've heard too many people talk about that being a turf school. So talk to us a little bit about that program.
No, so I was kind of lucky where Tom Cook was the professor, the turf professor there for a long time before me, and I kind of got on the tail end of him, and then also Rob Golombiewski, he's pretty well known throughout our
G11.
industry. What's that? Yeah, G11. Yeah,
G11.
yeah. He's he's kind of a I lucked out in the fact that I got some of Tom Cook and then Rob G11 in that. Um, just so much experience there. And then I had a lot of fun. I probably had too much fun, to be honest with you, at times. But it was different because I went back. I didn't appreciate college when I first uh, left high school, and I got out of it for a while, and then I started back in my mid 20s. So it was different going to school with 18, 19-year-olds when you're 24, 25 versus when you're 18. So my grades weren't so hot when I was in my early 20s, and then I had a lot of work to do to make up for that. But Oregon State was a lot of fun. Unfortunately, the program isn't what it used to be. When I was there, I think we had like 20, 22 kids, and now I think they're down to like 3 kids. So that's a bit of a change. I mean, that's 10 years time, really, because I think I officially graduated somewhere around 2014. But yeah, you're talking in 10 years time, they've lost that many students. I know they have the research at the Lewis Brown farm, but um, it's tough. I mean, we're not the only Oregon State's not the only one that's suffering with enrollment, but I don't know. It's a tough industry. I don't think a lot of kids know about it. I never knew about it. I figured it was a business degree and some experience. So when I saw turf school, I kind of it was hard to believe at first, as far as that they actually have a degree for this.
So having too much fun in college, we call that
Right.
earning life skills. So you're fine.
Yeah.
You prepared
Yeah.
yourself well.
There's a few walks from the Peacock back to my apartment complex because I lived on the other side of Reeser, the football stadium, and there was a few walks where I probably was lucky to make it home that night.
So how are you managing with all this realignment? I mean, is that really just jacked up a lot of your guys' rivalries or what?
Well, I mean, if you're Oregon State, they kind of got the shaft there. I'm not sure what happened there. I know their baseball team went independent, so they're probably not going to feel much of the pinch on that one. But um, they, yeah, I don't know. It's weird. I mean, I think the hope is that they wind up in the Big 12 potentially, but I don't know. More than likely, they're going to take some of the Mountain West teams and form just another Pacific Coast Conference.
Interesting. So you've
But
got
they play each other this weekend though. Oregon State. It's out Oregon
okay.
State this
Well,
weekend.
I hate to say it, but now I've got to root for Oregon since they're in the Big Ten. So I apologize. I apologize.
Well, we'll see what happens when they play Ohio State.
Yeah, I know that'll be a good one. I'm excited.
That's
I'm
an
excited.
Autzen too.
It's what?
I think it's an Autzen.
Oh, really?
It's
Oh,
out of
yeah,
Oregon,
you're
I'm
right.
pretty
You're
sure.
right. Yeah, I think it's like October 15th or somewhere
Right.
in there. But
Yeah.
so what is it about this industry that really drew you in when you had your experience out of Bandon, kind of working with your father-in-law and got some
Right.
of that experience? What was it that really drew you to this industry?
So originally, I was a kinesiology major, and I was going to go into physical therapy. That's what my father does, and I've always really enjoyed the industry. Um, I learned pretty early on that being inside was not conducive to my mental health, and I learned pretty quick I want to be outside. So what I usually tell people is I could have easily went to landscape or sports turf. It just so happened to be that I live 15 miles from the greatest golf resort in the world, so that helped out in my decision making. But yeah, it was just I knew early on that being outside was where I wanted to be. Obviously, the weather is always very fun at Bandon Dunes. It's when I'd hire people, the summers are great. They're beautiful, early 70s, maybe late 60s. Yeah, you're going to get some wind, potentially marine layer. But I always tell our new recruits at Bandon Dunes when I was hiring greenkeepers, it's deadly as catch, but it's on land. And so it doesn't always make for fun work, but I enjoy it. There's something about having fresh air every day, and instead of being stuck in an office. So pretty quickly I learned that it wasn't for me being inside.
What were some of the bigger challenges you guys faced out at Bandon?
I've been asked this question a few times, like, what do we do the most? Probably our most significant factor would be wind. We deal with a lot of wind. We are constantly doing bunker work. I mean, if you look at the sand dunes north of us, kind of in the Florence area, you can have literal mountains of sand move in a few months, and so we are completely exposed on the Oregon coast. So it was a lot of wind, and then in the afternoons you would get you get chapping on the greens because it would be 72 out and sunny, and if it's blowing 30-40 miles an hour, you know you fingers crossed you don't have any desiccation, but stuff happens, and we're out there hand watering, and then mornings we're shoveling bunkers or we're filling bunkers with sand. So wind is probably the biggest factor. Another big hurdle we face is Coos County is I want to say it's around 65,000 people. We do not have a large hiring pool, and most of what's there's a large retirement community, and so we struggle with staffing big time. I mean, it's it's been a real challenge trying to find people, especially the younger generation. I hate sounding like one of those people, but it is hard to get an 18, 19-year-old out there doing the work that we do and the kind of weather that we do, because the summers they're not fun either. I mean, sometimes they're not fun. And it can be pretty brutal out there, but just staffing, as far as an environmental stressor, wind, we've had some new stuff pop up, like we've had a lot of nematode damage. Not a ton of disease pressure, but we're starting to see more of it as temperatures warm. And so, but yeah, it's pretty much wind and people. I mean, it's just you have such a huge resort, and I call it it's kind of like living on an island essentially. I mean, it's really in a remote area. If you've ever been, it's hard to get to for a reason. It's a gorgeous property. The people are great, but yeah, it's be interesting to see what they do with staffing in the future. It's not easy trying to find people, and something like it's a little over half of the population is over 45 years old. So it's a tough spot to manage, a world-class golf resort. So my hat's off to everybody there.
So you go from that environment to basically, it sounds like almost the same environment. Because I mean, when I was there, you're dealing with a lot
Well,
of wind. You're kind of in a remote location, so you're well
right.
prepared for it now.
Yes, exactly. Yes, it is very remote where you're about 30. I want to say my wife and I, when we first flew in, it's about 35 minutes from the airport from Denver International. We live in the Brighton area, which is about 25 minutes to work. But it's about 45,000 people. So excuse me, the population isn't as dire as Bandon Dunes, because excuse me, and there's a younger population here. So it's not as bad. It's when you're out on site, it feels a lot more remote than it actually is. We're fortunate that we have some large ranches around us, that because if you look at Denver and 76 that goes by the golf course, you see these cul-de-sacs popping up everywhere. And actually, we live in a cul-de-sac kind of on the edge of greater Denver area. But yeah, it'll be a challenge. We're gonna have to match wages. There's a lot of agriculture out here. There's oil. The oil industry is out here. Natural gas is out here. So if we don't match wages, we could end up struggling. But there is a population here, if depending on what we end up doing there. But there's a lot more population than I expected. Now, directly around Rodeo Dunes, it's more desolate than even Bandon Dunes is. City of Rogan is maybe 200 people. So, and then you have a couple of small towns that are like 1,000, 1,200 people that are within 6 to 10 miles of it. But that's it. And then in the city of Rogan, they have a gas station and it advertises a restaurant. There's no restaurant in there. There's no working bathroom either. There's no working bathroom, and check expiration dates. They're great, but they are great people. They're really good people in there. And then there's a little motel next to it. So that's it though. It's all agriculture outside of that.
So with finding some staff for this course, then are you going to have the same kind of excuses that you had at Bandon?
Um, not necessarily. I think right now I'm currently building a team, and I have a couple hires that I've hired, and I'm pretty excited about. I won't take their thunder because they haven't announced anything yet, but we have some good hires. I went from being one of the younger people in agronomy at Bandon Dunes to now I'm the old guy, and it's kind of a weird transition for me being 37 and now now I'm the old guy. But yeah, as far as excuses, I'm gonna be more forward with technology. I know that Bandon Dunes struggles just because they're 5 hours from their Toro distributor, where we're 45 minutes from our Toro distributor. So there's a lot of challenges there that we aren't going to have that Bandon Dunes does, and will continue to have. They're really doing the best that they can with what they have, but we're fortunate to have pretty much everything at their disposal. With we have a large Toro distributor and LL Johnson. They're going to be doing our irrigation too as well. So we're fortunate in that aspect that we're so close, but we have the field being, like Brian said, being so remote. But yeah, it's just different. Somebody asked me a question if it's easier growing grass out here than it is the Oregon coast, and it's just different. Where they're pretty moderate temperatures and it's humid, and here it's very arid and we have temperature extremes. I mean, it's this morning waking up it was 49, but it's supposed to hit 91 today. So we're definitely, there's not a lot of middle ground here with our temperatures. So that's going to be a big challenge for us, but it'll just be different. We won't have the stress, the disease pressure that Bandon Dunes has, but we're gonna have to be on our irrigation game for sure.
Great name drops though with our presenting partner Toro. We appreciate that. That's well done.
I was hoping that
you did
they
your
might
research.
throw me a hat at some point.
Oh, well, we'll make some calls for you, Michael. I love it. So the thing that really blew me away when I was out there visiting was building this brand new 18-hole golf course. I think there were 4 of you on site.
Right.
That blows me away. How on earth are 4 people getting a golf course built?
That's a good question. It's they're working, they're essentially working 610s right now, the construction team. But they're very good at what they do. They're very efficient with their time. That I've worked around different shapers and working with John Hawker and then also my father-in-law, Tony Russell. They are different. They like to shape stuff and move on. It's not come back and make a lot of tweaks. They're shaping and moving on, and they know that they have something special here. Bill, I love working with Bill Core. He's a very humble guy, and he plays his cards pretty close to his chest. But it's a special place. There's not as much sand moving as there might be at a lot of different areas as well. I think most of their sand moving they're going to do is on the greens and tees. Their fairways were already there. They're already, I mean, they're not having it. In fact, if they're doing anything, they're taming some of the dunes out here versus at Bandon where you're, at least on the original course, some of them they added some of the dunes, but this is they're having to tame it down, not just because it's not a Bandon versus rodeo thing, it's also an elevation thing, and this is going to be one heck of a hike. So they're taming some of it down because of that, and just thinking about our older patrons. But yeah, it's long story short, they're moving quickly. They'll do more fine tuning in the spring when we start seeding, hopefully in April area, or that's what we're fingers are crossed for seeding in April. But they're moving quickly. They're not having to move a ton. It's already there. I know Bill compared the site to Sand Hills, so it's kind of got that feel. But it's different for sure.
So at this point, technically, you're a construction superintendent. And once the course
Correct.
is built and there's golfers and there's staff and everything, are you going to then be the golf course superintendent, or are you going to move on to keep building new golf courses?
That is TBD, and that's if I don't get fired between now and then. So
Right,
we'll,
exactly.
we'll see. We'll see. That is TBD. At some point, Michael Kaiser Jr. and I and a couple others are supposed to lock the second course. The second course, from what I understand, is they've have some preliminary routing done, but no grass lines or anything like that. But the second course is hopefully coming pretty soon. It's already there. We're laying the groundwork with the first course for them to be able to. It's going to come up a lot quicker than the first course. So second course is ready to go. As far as moving on, we'll see. That also, we'll see what my wife has to say about that too. It's very time consuming, and I have to ask the big boss about that too as well. So we'll see.
So speaking of Jenna, how are you guys doing?
We're doing okay. I mean, it's Brian, it's a day-to-day process with everything, and just I think it was a good move for us, not just from a personal standpoint, but a professional standpoint. So, and vice versa. Yeah, it's been a tough year, a little over a year now. So, um, yeah, it's day by day at this point. But we try to count our blessings every day and um, try to have a different perspective on life, in that every moment is truly precious. And if you're a father or a mother, and realize that you never know, sadly.
Yeah.
So
If you don't mind, just kind of tell us a story. Tell us about Grady.
so my son was born September 28th, 2020, and he had I'll give you the general paraphrasing. He was born with hypoplastic left heart syndrome, which is basically you're born without the left part of your heart. Unfortunately, 3 days in, he had major heart surgery, and the surgery went well, but some of the stuff after didn't go so well, and he ended up going into cardiac arrest for almost a half hour. Unfortunately, that caused a lot of brain damage, and that left him with a lot of seizures. He also had he was a quad cerebral palsy. Um, my wife's going to get mad at me that I forget some of this stuff. And then he had epileptic spasms, amongst other seizures, vision issues. Um, but even with all that, he survived, and I don't know how. I mean, he was in ICU for 3 or 4 months, and I was going to and from Seattle up there on the weekends, and then coming back from work during the week. And my wife, because my wife wasn't, I don't think she ended up making it home for like 6, 7 months after Grady was born, give or take. Anyways, he had his second heart surgery, and a few months later, and then he finally got to come home. And unfortunately, he dealt with some pretty traumatic, it's called infantile spasms, pretty bad stuff. um, and then we put him on a ketogenic diet. Well, the doctors did, and the significant seizures that he was having ended up going away. um, And then for about the last 6 months, he was seizure free. And then he got sick, and fortunately had a heart attack. So, anyways,
Well, I can tell you, we appreciate you just over the last couple of years sharing your story and you and your family's story with Grady. I mean, I think there's no question that he was an inspiration to so many people inside the industry, outside of the industry. I know when you and I talked a couple of years back when I came out and visit, you mentioned all the people that had reached out from even beyond the industry. So
right.
you and Jenna and Grady and your other two children, you guys have been an inspiration to so many people. And again, we just are so grateful that you shared Grady with everybody, shared your journey with everybody. And you know, again, just Grady had an amazing life. You and Jenna provided him with just an absolutely phenomenal life for the short time that he was here with us. And again, just grateful for you and sharing that journey with us, because it truly was an inspiration for everybody. That kid
Thank
battled,
you.
man.
I appreciate that, Brian. And for whatever reason, he kept on fighting. And that was when we got the original diagnosis. That was always our thing, is we're going to fight as long as he was going to fight. And yeah, he fought for a long time. And I can't imagine going through the pain, the pain that he went through, and persevering. And the, we talked about last time, the doctors don't outright tell you that he's not going to make it, but I can't tell you how many times um, they told us that it didn't look good and he's really sick, and to spend as much time with him. And obviously, except for the last time he came, he came through every time. And so it was, it's still an inspiration to me. And I don't know, grief is weird how it hits you. It's just like you're asking me how I was doing, and depends on the day. And there's times where it's just you're having a good day, and it's just like you're talking to somebody, and then all of a sudden it's just, it hits you. And I don't. It's weird. I don't. It's weird because you just like you start tearing up out of nowhere, and it's like they're asking, people are asking if you're okay, and like you kind of look half crazy. And it's the people that I work with. I mean, I haven't really talked with them about it too much. Obviously, my father-in-law knows, but our other shaper, and our the guy that's project manager for Encore Golf. I haven't said anything to them. So it's not that I'm not trying to talk about it, but it's just, when they talk about how hard things are, or just not them, just people in general, it's like, I just, I, I have a hard time biting my tongue when people say how hard it is. Not talking about myself or my wife, but just how hard my son fought for 2.5 years, and to spend most of that time, his life, and I always joked about his home away from home was always the hospital, and so it's been tough. Like I said, the grief is weird. And sometimes we feel guilty that, we're sorry.
Nothing to be sorry for, man.
Sometimes we feel guilty that we're off doing this and he's not here. So that's been a weird emotion. When we heard about this job 2 years ago, that's originally why I was interested in it, was because it was a chance that, we'd be closer to Denver and better healthcare. Whereas at Bandon Dunes, we were 5 hours away. Anytime he had something, it was life flighted. I mean, he had 3 or 4 life flights in just his 2.5 years. So that was difficult. Like, just to drive out here was difficult because he should have been with us. So yeah, I don't know. It's just weird. Grief is weird. Um, and my wife, she was a lot better at expressing her grief than myself. I think I had held it in for too long, and so there's a message out there, for anybody going through stuff, whatever, no matter what it is, but have it taken care of, talk to somebody, because it really wasn't until 3-4 months ago before I really reached out for help, and I wish I would have done it sooner. I may not have been ready when my wife did it, but I wish I would have reached out for help sooner. But yeah, it's whoever said time heals all wounds can eat shit, to be honest with you. I it doesn't. It's different. It's different. But it is weird. I mean, I've never really experienced PTSD, but it's like there's sometimes when you're in the middle of something just monotonous and you have really bad flashbacks. I mean, it happens, and I don't really have triggers. It's just sometimes it kind of comes back to you, and it's yeah, it's tough. But yeah, sorry,
No,
kind of went on
yeah,
a rant there, or a tangent. But yeah,
there's
yeah, I mean, I can't say it's getting better, but I'm we're learning how to enjoy ourselves a little bit more. This is a tough month, being that it's Grady's birth month, just coming up here in a few weeks. So this is kind of a tough time. We're gonna try and do something to celebrate his life. We haven't figured it out yet, but like I said, I felt partly kind of like when this job came open, I felt like I don't know, there's something about it. I was just sitting there and just happened to see it come across my email, and I applied for it, not thinking that I'd be superintendent number one, but maybe superintendent number two. Uh, and then Michael Kaiser Jr. called me, and over a few interviews and a couple of site visits, said be here in 6 weeks. Job's yours, and so yeah, it worked out, just not the way that we are hoping or expecting. So Yeah, I can't remember your question is. I'm
You're
sorry.
you're fine. You're fine. There's nothing to be sorry about. There's nothing to feel guilty about, man. Again, it's you guys have been through a lot and certainly understand it. And please know, obviously, I try to reach out. I'm not as good as I should be, but you're
That's
always
okay.
welcome to call me anytime. And I think one of the really neat things that I've seen come from it is what you guys have been doing with a lot of the equipment that you guys had taken in from Grady and now
Right.
providing that to other people. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So some of the adaptive equipment, I mean, obviously, we no longer have a use for. So we've donated a lot of it either back to Coos Bay. We're from Coos Bay, their ESD, and they've loaned a lot of it back out. But yeah, we've donated a lot of almost all of his stuff. There's only a couple of stuff that we actually kept just as like a memento. Like we have a stroller, which eventually we'll probably donate, but that one's kind of tough right now to get rid of, being that he spent probably his most time in his stroller. But yeah, so most of the stuff that we've given away, and excuse me, other kids in the Coos County, Oregon coast area have been able to reutilize it. And we actually my wife had a few people reach out to her when they found out that it was Grady's, and to thank her. So that was pretty special. And at some point, we want to do something with adaptive toys in Grady's honor. Right now, we're trying to figure out what that looks like, but some sort of a nonprofit where we can, adaptive toys are, it might be $75 for a regular child, but for an adaptive kid, it could be $300, $400, $500 to adapt it to their specific needs. So we're looking into doing something like that, setting up a nonprofit in Grady's name to benefit children. Um, but yeah, it's been
Awesome.
it's obviously it's tough for us, but it's good to see families be able to utilize some of the toys and stuff he had, and adaptive equipment.
It's obviously not an easy story to tell, and we really appreciate you, putting yourself out there and being vulnerable because it can be tough. And obviously, Grady was an inspiration and somebody that we want to remember. So, I really appreciate you putting yourself out there and telling that story. And you quickly started talking about kind of the healing side of things. And, it'll probably never go away and he'll always be with you. But, what do you kind of do to try and take care of yourself and take care of that mental health so you can be there for your family and be that father and be that leader?
So originally I did nothing, and that wasn't the right decision. I tried to bottle it up, and my wife could see it. I mean, I started getting more irritable, both at work and at home. And I just don't think that I had processed it. I'm not sure that I was ready in the moment, but being the father, you feel the need to lead your family, and so that was difficult putting that aside. But eventually did. It's a group called Grief Share, and it's just meetings with other people that have lost loved ones, and everybody shares their stories, and then they have videos and stuff that you can go through. So I eventually did that. I also put on, since Grady was born, I put on a lot of weight. So in the last several months, I've been exercising more. I get up and I go for a walk, and then also too working out on site, just trying to stay active, and outside is very healing for me anyways. And then just hanging out with my family, really. I mean, that's, like I said, it gives you a perspective that most don't, and fortunately most don't have to deal with this. I mean, that's the way life's supposed to be. But um, for me and my wife, it's we've become closer to our children, and just spending time with them and making sure that they have everything to be happy and successful in life, because they're also dealing with trauma. Unfortunately, they saw some stuff that they shouldn't have to at 7 and 9 years old, or then it was 6 and 8. So they saw some stuff that most 6 and 8 year olds don't, and so that's been a little bit of a process. So it's long story short, I tried to nicotine and caffeine it for a while, and that didn't work. And like I said, I went to grief share, and it really helped. And it's something that now that I'm here, I'm continuing, or will be continuing to do. But yeah, it's it's funny because life is very mental, and self talk is very important. And you can get down in ruts no matter what you've been through in life. You can kind of go down through those paths of, you have negative self-talk, and until you learn to reverse that, you're gonna continue to spiral, and you think that you can solve these problems, and you can't. I mean, most people can't. It's just, it's tough. And so being able to reverse that, for me, talking to people, talking to others that have lost children has really helped too. But then there comes to a point where I mean, I don't know. You hear these stories, and at some point you got to tell yourself it's okay to heal and move on. Because if you don't, you're going to be in that repetitive loop of negativity. And I think it's just being happy without a loved one is difficult, because you feel selfish in a way. But it is for those of you that have lost, or have lost people, it is okay to be happy. It's okay to not move on necessarily, but it's okay to live and be happy, because we're not here for very long, really. I mean, you live 75 years if you're lucky. That's not a long time. It's not a long time. So just to answer your question, long story short, again, sorry. It's getting outside, and like I said, I've been doing grief share, or was doing it, and I need to get back into it. But family time has definitely helped out quite a bit, and I think just being productive has helped me. Doing something new, and putting yourself out there. I mean, this is, I don't know what the future holds for myself and my family, but uh, I know that I couldn't tell my kids, couldn't look my kids in the eyes and not do this, and then expect them to put themselves out there and take a chance. So, it's a bunch of different factors on healing, on as far as that's concerned. But it's a weird situation. Like I said, you want to be happy, but at the same time, you're missing something. So it's tough.
I know being a father is probably the most important thing in your life. Talk about how you balance being a father and being a superintendent.
I know you and I've had this conversation off camera before. For me, it's quality over quantity. I grew up with a father that was very busy. He always made time to spend time with us, though. Like each summer, he'd take a couple weeks off. He's a physical therapist, but he also owned his own physical therapy company for business. And so he was always busy, but the time that he did spend with us was memorable. He was actually engaged. I think I don't know if it's a today society, a society today type thing, but see a lot of fathers that go home and they sit around, or they're disengaged, or they'll go do something else when they have kids at home. And to me, I'm not judging anybody, because we all go through stuff in life, but if you're gonna have kids, I mean, you're locked in for 18 years, and so they will always come first. Obviously, I'm a little bit more busy than I have been in a while, and Next summer is going to be crazy. So if the time that you spend with them, make it memorable. I mean, it's hard to not do that. When you come home and as a superintendent or whatever you are, assistant greenkeeper, whatever, you get home and it's hard not to sit down. You've had a hard, long day and it is very difficult. And you've given 90% of yourself to this job and you got 10% left. But even if it's for 2 hours to go out and play catch with your son, play Barbies with your daughter, um, whatever that might be, because that's the stuff they're going to remember. I don't remember, I didn't grow up wanting for things, but I don't remember getting stuff. I remember spending time with my father, and just the simple camping trips, nothing lavish. We're in a tent on the Oregon coast, marine layers in. It's probably 45 degrees in August, and those are the times I remember. I don't remember the stuff that I got. I don't remember any of that. I remember my dad, he was also a wrestling coach and they had a big duel and he skipped out on the big duel with the rival school to come watch me play 8th grade basketball. I remember stuff like that. I don't remember, like I said, I don't remember the stuff or the meaningless stuff. I remember him, he couldn't, for the life of him, he couldn't make a pancake, but he thought he could. I remember that. That's the stuff I remember. And I think that's what most kids remember. I think, like I said, it's definitely quality over quantity. Because it can have the reverse, in my opinion, it can have the reverse effect. If you're home and you're not engaged in your kids' lives, it can backfire on you, and they can have a negative. They'll have the negative memories about you, even though you spent 4 or 5, 6 hours with them a day. If you're not actively engaged, it's it's hard to be a father. And then you asked about splitting time between work and being a parent. That is one thing. When I talked to Michael Jr., I made it clear that I am a father first. I understand that there is work and there's work to be done, but I am a father first. um, I said I understand that I'm definitely going to miss stuff, unfortunately, but there are going to be some things where I have to leave for a couple hours to go watch my son play football or my daughter play volleyball or whatever it might be. But Michael Jr. was very he's a father himself and he's very passionate about it. And I think that the quality over quantity really struck a chord with him, and he's made it known several times, if you're not doing anything dangerous, have the kids out there. He doesn't care. So they're gonna get some construction experience next summer as well, some growing experience as well. But
Nice.
yeah, my son's not quite old enough to put on a mower yet, but I told him as soon as he's old enough to walk mow, he's gonna be out there. So we're getting close to that. But yeah, they're I want them a part of I've always wanted them a part of my job. That was one nice thing about Bandon Dunes and working under Jeff Sutherland is in the afternoons, it was whenever the kids wanted to come, he was really good at interacting with them, but getting out there and just experiencing it. Because if I feel like that's the way to do it, is have if the family is involved. And obviously there's not every situation that you can do that, but when you can, definitely have your family involved. I mean, if it's not dangerous, bring them out. And I'll have the same situation with the people that work under me. And if we're not doing anything dangerous, bring your kids out. I don't, if they want to, have them rake bunkers or something, I don't really care. It might be a liability issue, but we'll tackle that when we get there. But if you want employees to stay, right, and if they can't actively engage and spend time with their family, especially this day and age, you're not going to keep anybody. So that's my spiel on that.
It's good.
That's great. Yeah, I was going to ask you about bringing the kids on the course, and that's great to hear that they're right in there with you, be part of the crew.
Right.
Switching gears just a little bit, talking about maybe some of the staff, some of the kids that would be coming up working for you. We've talked a lot about superintendents and leaders trying to give people the time and kind of the ability to have a life outside of the golf course and things, and that is all great. But some advice for some of the younger people coming up in the industry. What are some of the qualities you're looking for as a superintendent or as a leader? And what are some of the things you want to see some of these people doing, and some of the qualities that they're going to have coming up?
So, for one, and a lot of these are cliches, but they ring true. Don't be afraid to fail. Um, if you're afraid to fail, this is a tough industry to be in and be successful. As far as characteristics, I look at consistency. I want you there every day, consistently the same person as much as possible. Obviously, we all have stuff that we go through in life, but I know I've said that several times, but it's true. So if you definitely be consistent in, I mean, it's a lot of it's showing up. If you don't show up, you can't do your job. So show up, be consistent, have a good attitude, be willing to learn. I see, for the most part, in our industry, our interns are pretty humble, but every now and then you run into an intern or two that they might think that they know more than they do, and I can tell you it is 100 for 100 that you're going to be humbled if you have any sort of arrogance in this industry. You're going to be humbled for sure. Um, the other thing so when I have interns, at least when I was at Pacific Dunes, and I'll do the same thing at Rodeo, but they do everything. I got locked into an internship and I did it for a name. And unfortunately, all I did was walk mow greens and set tees. And you don't learn. So I'm big on you operating everything. And my opinion was that if you could do it at Pacific Dunes, you're going to be able to do it anywhere in the country, probably world. So that's one thing that they have that confidence going forward in, whether it's top dressing or spraying or mowing. I have them do everything. The other thing I also had them do is I had them lead the crew for 1 week. They were the assistant superintendent for 1 week. They answered to Jeff Sutherland, who's the super there, and then they ran the crew. And so the reason why I bring that up is, and I was the same way too when I was in my early 20s. You're wide-eyed and bushy-tailed, and you want to talk about grass, which is great. Definitely learn about grass, but know that most of your job is managing people. And I think any superintendent that's worth their weight is going to tell you the same thing. Most of them would rather manage grass, but you end up managing people more. So if you're a young person in this industry, definitely look into leadership. Talking to Rob Doom, the director of Sand Valley, he and I share a common book, and it is Extreme Leadership by Jocko Willink. I think that's a good one to look into. Because if you can't, I mean, you run into people in this industry that are insanely intelligent, but when it comes to managing people, they can't stand in front of a crowd, and that's a tough combination. I mean, if you're a superintendent, maybe it works out that you have your assistant in front of people, but it is very difficult to manage people, and it's constantly changing. We we've had some interesting characters and pretty much everywhere I've worked at, but it's it's getting more difficult to keep people motivated. The old school ways are kind of going away. Trying to be as polite as possible, but you're not going to be able to be a hard A word anymore and keep your crew. It ain't going to happen, especially if they're under 40. I'm not saying everybody's like this. We definitely have some hard workers at Bandon Dunes that are under 40 that they don't need that motivation. But that's it's not going to work anymore. You're going to get people quit. I've not at Bandon Dunes, but I've seen it other places where a superintendent's difficult to work with, and they're constantly going through a rotation of people. But to bring it back to what you're talking about, consistency, leadership, and I don't care what your education says. I don't care if it's a 4-year, a doctorate, master's, 2-year degree, 1-year certificate. I don't personally care what that says. If you're wanting to be, an assistant or superintendent, I mean, yes, there is some impact behind that as long as you have something, but nothing replaces experience. So that's my spiel. Leadership, be consistent, show up. It's really that easy. Be willing to learn, find somebody successful. If you don't have that education, like if you have a 1-year or whatever 6-month certificate, find somebody that's successful in the industry and ask them, reach out. I mean, I can't tell you how many superintendents that I've reached out in the state of Colorado have been very pleasant. Cordell Walker at Ballyneal, Kevin Malloy at TPC Colorado, Steve Eller at Colorado Golf Club. All these guys I've reached out to, all of them have been willing to talk turf with me, been great. That's what I suggest you do. Find somebody that you want to be and ask them how they did it. I think is an important key. I wish I would have done that versus try to figure it out on my own. I think it'd have been nice to have a few pointers, but that's my spiel on advice for youngins.
How has your family experience shaped you or changed you as a leader?
I think it's kind of human nature I mean, we talked about kind of being hard on people. I think bottom line is you never know what people are going through. And so it's difficult to navigate that. So I would say is one of the big changes is just realizing like, hey, this person could be going through something really, really difficult. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes it's they can't make it to work because it's cutting into video game time at night, and but a lot of times there's something there, whether it's a breakup, obviously a loss of life, close family member, whatever, financial issues. Yeah, those issues definitely come up, but I would say it's for the most part is just realizing like at the end of the day, we're all people. We all have our own lives. I think that is big for me. It's going to be a challenge at Rodeo Dunes with the type of climate we're in to be able to send people home early. But if we can, I'm sending people home early. And I apologize. There's a superintendent I heard one time that said he locks the gate at 2:30 and no one else comes back in. So if we can figure out down the road how to do that so people have lives at home, because I think that's one thing that sometimes as supers we can get into, or assistants, you're just programmed to think about work. And I mean, that's what we're paid to do, but people they have lives outside of work. And if, unfortunately, you try not to let your personal life bleed into your professional life, but it does happen. And I think one thing I've gotten better is having one-on-one time with those people that are struggling, whether you can visually see them struggling or they're struggling in their work performance, and bringing them aside and asking, and first of all, figuring out if there is something wrong. So that's one thing that's been a big difference for me, is just being there for people and realizing that they're more than just a greenkeeper. They're more than just a superintendent, assistant, whatever it might be. They're people, and at the end of the day, that's what's important is the person, not the job or job description, job title, whatever you want to call it.
And I'm glad you talk about that one-on-one relationship. I think something that's getting better in this industry and with leadership and that sort of thing. But to be a superintendent and run a whole crew, you really do have to have those personal relationships and be able to separate them from your, professional working relationship, because you never know
Right.
what people are going through and what kind of day they're having. So to be able to have that personal relationship also makes them trust you a lot more, right? Makes them be honest with you and be able
Right.
to know that they can trust you. So I think that's fantastic. And Michael, this has been great. This has been a very serious podcast, and I just looked up at the time there. I'm shocked we've been recording for this long. I've just been locked in listening to everything, and so I really appreciate that. I think people are really gonna love your story. When we reached out for the questionnaire, you wrote a lot of stuff down. You had a lot of funny stories on there. I
Yeah,
think we should end with a
the
few.
call-ins are great.
Yeah,
That superintendents don't talk about that enough. Their call-ins are amazing. I have some great stories.
yeah. So let's finish off with a few of your stories from the list.
All right, so the superintendents, I mean, they get frustrated with the call-ins or call-outs, whatever you want to call it. Um, but I'll leave you with a couple stories. I had a couple of I had one greenkeeper one time. He had been having issues showing up, right? And so finally I got a hold of him because it had been a few days, and it's to the point like you have like 3 days of no show, no calling, and you're terminated, right? So he was a good kid, and I tried to hang on to him as long as possible. Well, I finally got a hold of him, and he's I verified this later. He had prize chickens, and one of them was sick, and he had stayed home to take care of his chicken.
That's the
So,
worst.
and then there is another young man. This is all one person. There is another young man. He was a young Vietnamese kid. Just I think he was just 18 or 19. He was here on a work visa, and he he kept on calling out, and I eventually he'd worked his 3 months, right? So he built up paid time off, and he was missing, and then he'd just write off his paid time off. Well, he ran out of his paid time off that I'd been putting it on the books for him, and eventually he came in and he got his next paycheck. Well, it didn't have PTO on it, and he missed 5 or 6 days. He called out. He was sick, and he he came in, he was hot, and he goes, "Where's my money?" And I asked him, "What do you mean?" And he goes, "I didn't get paid." And I said, "Well, you didn't show up to work. If you don't show up to work, you don't get paid, and you're out of your paid time off." And he goes, "What's paid time off?" Because they go over at orientation at Bandon. And so he had thought that in America, if you miss work, you still get paid.
Oh,
He was
wow.
he was under that impression. All right. And then, so last story, it's actually the same young man, who, by the way, he quit eventually, and he started a nail salon with his mom. So that's another fun, interesting story.
There you go.
It's an interesting transition.
Right. So we had a bad storm one night at Bandon, and the power went out. And this young man only lived like I said, he was from Vietnam. He only lived here for a couple years. He went to Bandon High School, but had only lived here for a couple years. He spoke broken English, but anyways, he lived maybe a quarter mile from the resort, and the power went out, and he called my cell phone, and he goes, "My house ran out of electricity," and I said, "What?" And he goes, "Yeah, the batteries are out," and I said, that's not how it works. Well, he'd made his room in the garage, and he was locked in the garage. And and eventually we had another guy that was running a little bit late for work, so I had him stop and pick him up. Well, he was locked in the garage. They'd actually locked the garage door, so he was literally stuck in the garage. And then the orange, pull down on the overhead door was gone. So he couldn't
Jeez.
figure out. So there's like this. There's probably only a foot opening that he was. And this is 4 o'clock and 4:30 in the morning, so it's pitch dark. He is coming out the side of the house out of the window, and the guy that we sent to pick him up, the headlights hit, and there's this young Vietnamese kid that's hanging out, and the guy that I had pick him up, he's like, man, I'm sure glad the cops didn't go by because that did not look good. Yeah.
That's great.
So Collins they're interesting. So and some of them are pretty funny. But yeah, it's
I want to
some
hear
of
the
them are
lovemaking
stressful.
story you wrote down.
What's that?
I want to hear about the lovemaking story that you put down in your questionnaire.
So this happened when I was an assistant at Bandon. I was up in on the Oregon coast, and we had a guy call in. Well, he left a message, but I'm not sure if he butt dialed or what. But you heard him and his wife in the background for a good 3 minutes before eventually it cut out, and it was oh my gosh, because I got to work at like 4:15 that morning, and like that's the first thing you hear is this guy, and but then the sad thing is I had to call him back to make sure he wasn't going to come to work.
Yeah.
Oh, some beauties.
What about the guy pulling his own tooth on the golf course? That's wild.
Okay, yeah. So, all right, that's a good one. So, Fred White, unfortunately, he passed away a little over a year ago. He's a great guy. Started construction at Pacific Dunes. Was there as long as he could. He had gotten older in life, and he retired a couple years ago. Unfortunately, passed away a year ago. But I just started as a chemical applicator on Pacific Dunes, and I got to 14 T's, which is it's the par three that kind of sits up on the ridge there. And I noticed this red stuff everywhere, and I was like, what is that? Because I almost thought it was like the OB paint. And so I was like, what is going on? I thought maybe our super Jeff Sutherland, like, thought maybe he had a stroke or something. And so eventually I fertilized 14 T's, and then I got to 15. And I go, Fred White, he was our T guy at the time. And I said, did you see all that red stuff on 14 T's? And as soon as I asked him that, he turned around and he's got blood that's dripping out of his mouth. And he goes, yeah, I've had a bad tooth for a few days. And he had his Leatherman and used the plier portion of it to pull his tooth out. And he bled all over the T deck.
Oh,
This is my first day on Pacific Dunes, and I'm like, what is going on?
Yeah. You got me working with this guy pulling his own teeth?
Right. Yeah. Fred was he was cut from a different cloth than most people. The other story I had too was Mark Coleman, and Fred was a great guy. He's the one that taught me to be a man, and he taught me a lot about leadership. But when I was at Bandon, they had Mark Coleman, who had been there since growing at Bandon, and unfortunately he passed away a few years ago too. But he's a great guy. But he was super cheap, right? He would buy the cheapest pipe tobacco you could get at the tobacco store, and he would roll it. Well, the guy was from Southern California, and you could clearly tell because when he was rolling it, it looked like a doobie. And I'm like, Mark, what are you doing? And he's like, and then you could smell it was cheap pipe tobacco. And he's like, yeah, this cigarettes got too expensive, so now I roll my own. It's just like, good grief. So yeah, those are some funny stories. There's another one I know I put on there. It was the 2019 US Ben's 4-ball, hole 3. It's the first bunker on the right. We're 15 minutes to tee time, potentially less. And this is the first day of real play, right? And we didn't know we were going to be on TV. And then all of a sudden they told us at the last minute we're going to be on TV. So my boss, Jeff, is like super nervous, right? He's like kind of in panic mode. Like, it's the first day, USGA's everywhere. And the guy's mowing trim around the bunkers, and he went in the bunker, and they called it out over the radio. And my boss, Jeff, he called my cell phone because it always goes to this assistant, right? So he calls me, and he goes, I'm so angry right now. I can't go there. You got to go and check it out. And we went over there, and it was it was like worst case scenario, like 2 out of the three wheels are in the bunker. It's probably the worst bunker to go in out or on that hole anyways. And we at that point we're like 10 minutes away, 8-10 minutes away from tea time. It's hole number 3. um so they were trying to figure out what to do, and finally our boss Jeff shows up and he goes, I want everybody that's not on a mower over here. And sure enough, there was like 6 or 7 of us that lifted that mower out of the bunker and back onto the fairway there. But it was like all hands on deck, panic. Oh, and then there's another one at the 2020 US Amateur, the COVID year. That was interesting, but we had a guy that was mowing 18 tees or the trim around 18 tees, and he actually mowed over the TV cable. Apparently,
no.
that's a big deal.
Come on.
That's a no-no.
That's an
Yeah,
expensive whoopsie.
He wasn't doing that the next day. Let's just say that.
Yeah, no, he was on the divot crew next day.
Yeah, he was. It was, yeah, that wasn't good. Yeah,
Oh,
so
man.
there's quite a few stories out there.
That's what
We
makes
had
it
like
interesting, right?
right, exactly. When I was at Gerhardt, we had elk that would come through. That's kind of a big thing on the northern Oregon coast. There's a huge elk population. It no longer crosses east on 101. It stays to the west of 101. So like elk droppings everywhere. They go across your greens. We only had like an acre of greens, so they're pretty tiny. They're tiny, and so the elk would just destroy stuff. And we had some H2B visa workers that were pretty good at getting rid of the elk on that property. But yeah, just it's funny. There's a lot of stories that you hear about. It doesn't matter what size of if you're at a major golf resort or you're a local 9-holer, always entertaining stories. It's almost, clientele doesn't change much. So it's maybe expectations are a little bit different, but yeah, clientele doesn't change much. It's been a very entertaining industry. Sometimes it's like, why did I do this? But most days, 9 out of 10 days, I really enjoy it. But it's you kind of have to you have to have some humility and be able to you got to be able to laugh at stuff or you're gonna go crazy.
Humility and a sense of humor for sure.
Right,
Oh, yeah.
right, exactly.
Awesome. Well, this has been great, Michael. Always great to catch up with you. Appreciate all your time here and sharing your stories. Like I said, great to see you and look forward to the next trip out there.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, buddy. Take care.
All right, have a good day, guys.
Thanks a
We'll
lot,
see ya.
Michael. You too.